agree. Of course, a limited portion of this retaliation has already taken concrete form, but until it's fully realized, this file will remain open above the others. As far as the current conditions allow, sufficient measures must be defined and implemented to compensate for the financial losses inflicted on personal property and premises. In any case, we will take reparations from the enemy. If it refuses, we will seize as much of his assets as we deem appropriate, and if that is not possible, we will destroy an equivalent amount of its property. Our neighbors must clarify their position regarding those who have attacked our beloved homeland and killed members of our people. I recommend that they shut down those bases as soon as possible, because by now they must have realized that America's claim of establishing security and peace was nothing more than a lie. So this part is also important because these are basically the demands being made, right? And these demands being made are echoing what Ali Larjani has said so far, echoing what the president has said so far. So it's very clear that all of the conversations that were taking place in the last couple of days about like whether there is unity or chaos amongst the mechanisms of control. Is the IRGC in charge? Is the Ayatollah in charge? Is the three-person council in charge? All of that, all of the confusion surrounding that stuff has come to an end because every single person that is now communicating what the desires of the Islamic Republic are in this tit for tat back and forth are identical, right? They're all saying the same thing. These are the demands that have been echoed by numerous other figureheads, both those who are directly in charge of the IRGC and also in charge of civilian governance as well, like the president and the foreign minister, Arakshi, saying that we will demand reparations from the enemy for all of the incalculable loss of human life, saying that all of the regional actors in the Gulf that must make their positions known on continuing to align with America and Israel, a demand for American retreat from these bases, right? That was like a day one suggestion, and now it's turned into a full-blown demand. We share land or maritime borders with 15 neighboring countries and have always desired a warm and constructive relationship with all of them. However, for years, the enemy has gradually established bases, both military and financial, in some of these countries in order to secure its dominance over the region. During these recent attacks, some of those military bases were used, as we had clearly warned, and without taking any action against those countries themselves, we targeted only those bases. From now on, we will again be compelled to continue doing this if necessary, although we still believe in the importance of maintaining friendly relations with those neighboring countries. I repeat once again, the Islamic Republic system, without seeking to establish domination or colonial control in the region, is fully prepared for unity and warm, sincere mutual relations with all of its neighbors. Addressing the martyred former supreme leader, with your departure, you have inflicted a heavy grief upon the hearts of us all. You always longed for this end, and finally the Almighty granted it to you while you were reciting the Holy Quran in the morning on the 10th day of the blessed month of Ramadan. Going back to what we talked about before, as far, not entirely true. This is literally the same. This is the identical position with China, okay? Oh, China wants regional dominance. China wants regional dominance. No, China wants regional cooperation, regional security. If China wanted regional dominance, this is the perfect opportunity for China to seize control over all of the other countries that America has used as a fucking fleshlight, right? So why are they not doing it? China wants stability. Iran wants the same. And this is a controversial position for me to say because many other regional actors, specifically in countries that are either controlled by, Sunni Muslim leadership. You're talking about, I was saying that they had only hit the bases. No, they haven't only hit the bases. They've hit the bases and they've hit other like military, other places where like soldiers are in precise strikes. And in comparison to the American and Israeli casualties in Iran versus Iran's retaliatory strikes in the Gulf nation states, the number of civilian casualties are literally not even comparable, right? oftentimes we have this assessment here in the United States of America that our enemies are actually not abiding by the rules of war. And in many instances, there are instances where they don't, right? There are instances of resistance groups that end up killing a bunch of civilians. October 7 is a great example of this, right? It's true. This happens. But in comparison to the American and Israeli strikes that kill civilians with impunity, it's not even a comparison that you can make. They do abide by rules of warfare in comparison to what we do. That's just the truth. This is why a comparison between Ukraine and Russia versus Israel's conduct in Gaza is a silly one, okay? And the reason why I use Russia in this example is because Russia is the one country that is a regional actor, a sovereign power, a regional superpower that has actually done a fuck ton of violent things in Ukraine. And yet even then, it's not comparable to what Israel has done in Gaza. This is just objectively the truth. This is not someone who is defending Russia whatsoever. Okay, I am not defending Russia in any way, shape, or form. Okay, having said that, however, there is a reason why when you look at the civilian death tolls in Russia's conduct in Ukraine, as opposed to the civilian death toll in Gaza, there is a different military objective. It's clear. Like, look at the numbers. And this is a country that has actually engaged in a litany of war crimes in their conduct. Russia has done a fuck ton of war crimes in Ukraine, okay? Targeting civilian infrastructure, killing a bunch of civilians, killing children, and even displacing civilians and replacing civilians that used to live in the territories that they previously occupied. There are a bunch of things that Russia has done that are objectively war crimes, right? They reach the standard of war crimes 100%. And having said that, it's still not even remotely comparable to what Israel has done in Gaza. And the same goes for Ukraine as well. Like, albeit marginal in comparison to the death toll that Russia has committed in Ukraine, civilian death toll. But, in retaliation to that, Ukraine has also tried to do its very best to make this military campaign as costly as possible, and at times has also struck, civilian infrastructure, like bridges, things of that nature. But having said that, once again, nothing in comparison, right? And significantly to a lesser degree than what Russia has been able to do in Ukraine, of course. Unfortunately, the normies will never understand a comparative argument because their ears close as soon as they hear a negative thing about their oppressive government. Yeah. They've hit civilian airports, they've hit oil tankers, they've hit oil depots, they've hit GCC government buildings. They're either targeting non-U.S. targets as well or targeting is disrupted. And that's what I mean when I say it's not entirely true. It's not a comparison of Iran and Israel or making a slight at Iran. Yes, they have. They have hit civilian airports that also carry fucking, oil tankers and refueling fighter jets for the American military campaign. When you are a country like Iran, you have to make every single piece of munition count. America and Israel, on the other hand, don't need to restrain themselves at all because, one, they have full command over international institutions, as you have seen in the UN General Assembly. And two, they have virtually unlimited supply of offensive capabilities as opposed to Iran's offensive capabilities. Offensive capabilities that do have the tendency to get deteriorated by Israel and America's steady bombing campaigns in areas where they reach air superiority, albeit for a brief moment in time. They have to make it count. America doesn't. They could just do unlimited strikes. America can stand to lose a fuck ton of MQ-9 Reaper drones, for example. They can loiter over Iranian territory and just like blow shit up nonstop. It's simply it's a matter of capability. Like, I'm sure if Iran had the same capabilities, they would I don't know what they would do, right? If they had the same capabilities, maybe they would be just as destructive, right? So what I'm talking about is a case of like what limitations exist, like what hard limitations exist on waging a defensive war, right? Part of it also stems from the fact that America is so far removed from the conflict. Anyway, Ayatollah Moshtaba Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, concludes his first message: "You people led the country. The insight and wisdom of the great nation of Iran in the recent events, along with the steadfastness, courage, and presence, made friends admire and enemies astonished. It was you, the people, who led the country and guaranteed its power." So that was, that was the short and sweet of it. A summarization of like the demands being made. It's still a regional war, though. Also, do you think Iran will be forced to test a nuke to stop America and Israel escalating the war more? I don't think they would do it now. I think it's an inevitability that Iran will get a nuke. I think the calculation right now in the short term is to damage the global economy hard enough, damage American assets hard enough to cause them to retreat, to cause them to not go up the escalation ladder or force them into a de-escalation, or invite them into boots on the ground military warfare, which will absolutely be destructive both for Iran, but certainly for the American troops, right? That's also part of the reason why they keep saying, come on, bring a naval asset into the Strait of Hormuz to try to fucking move a tanker through. Like, they keep inviting that over and over again. In some ways, Iran is best positioned for direct invasion. They're best positioned for direct invasion by American forces because America has no logistical supply chain that they can create to consistently feed munitions and food and medical supplies for their soldiers if they were to make this mistake of invading Iran, a country that is basically a fucking fortress that has natural choke points that I suspect the Iranian weapons have been trained on for decades at this point, right? Because like this mountainous region in Iran, the topography of Iran makes it so that there are natural choke points that you have to go through, right? You have to bring your heavy weapons through, and that will cause the American military, that if they do invade, if they make this fucking gigantic mistake of invading Iran militarily, that will create an environment that's just like, it's a turkey shoot, right? Like the Iranian forces will fucking eviscerate so much of the American equipment. There's very little chance of an American success in that situation. Iran is not like Iraq. They have a competent military that has been training for this. They have a competent military that's actually been working on counterinsurgency initiatives in the region as well. Like, there is a reason why America thinks that they can invoke some kind of regime change from an aerial bombing campaign. But in the absence of any sort of popular mobilization on the ground, they will never be able to achieve that. Even in Libya, where this was primarily an air campaign with like bombing missions, they still had plenty of popular mobilization and forces that they could tap into on the ground, and a lot of anger and resentment from certain sectarian groups inside of Libya. In the absence of that, in the absence of like Kurds and the Balochis and the Sunnis living in Iran and some of the Persians or whatever, if they cannot activate these people, there is no way that they can achieve regime change. Which, by the way, won't even be fucking regime change. Let's be real. There is very little likelihood that a country with a 30% popular, social base is going to turn around and allow all these other ethnic groups to overtake the country and like piece it aside and balkanize it.
the rhetoric that we are hearing from Iran's new supreme leader is quite similar to his father's rhetoric. Remember, Iran's former supreme leader was taken out in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury when this war began. And in those opening strikes, Mujtaba Khamenei's wife, mother, and one son were also killed. Again, the latest remarks, though, that we are getting from the supreme leader via state media, and we are quoting Reuters here, indicate that he will continue ordering the attacks on U.S. bases in the region and continue efforts to close the Strait of Hormuz. Bill, Dana?
And Trey, as you pointed out, Iran's new supreme leader said that Iran has, quote, warm relations with Gulf countries. I'm curious, how do you think those Gulf countries are going to react to hearing that, considering Iran is droning and missiling them every day?
Yeah, I've been speaking with Gulf leadership and sources over the past 2 weeks, and I would not describe the current relations as warm between these two countries. Not only Qatar, but the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain have all come under Iranian ballistic missile and drone fire in recent days. And while the Iranians have attacked U.S. bases in the region, they have also attacked civilian infrastructure and energy infrastructure, including Omani energy infrastructure. We showed you those images earlier this hour of an oil storage facility in Oman burning as a result of an Iranian.
I don't know how we can say that all of Iran's attacks have been meticulously planned due to the scarcity when they've shot 2 rockets into Turkey, drones into Azerbaijan, and hit things like the Kuwaiti Ministry of Social Services. It's just more messy than Khamenei or we are suggesting. No, of course. That's what I'm not saying it's fucking 100% precise. I'm simply saying that if you look at 2 countries that actually have precise targeting capabilities that have still double tapped a fucking school in comparison to the death toll, the civilian casualty from the IDF side and the American side, Iran is 100% abiding by a code of conduct that is infinitely closer to the international rules of war, okay? That's all I'm saying. Of course they're not fucking fully following it. It's virtually impossible. This is not a defense of what they're doing anyway. There is a reason why in the first couple of days, everyone was like, why are they hitting these hotels? What the fuck's going on? They stopped asking those questions, if you recall. If you noticed, they stopped asking those questions. The Kuwait, the 7 soldiers that were killed in Kuwait were killed in a targeting operation that actually slammed a civilian port. They blew up a civilian port in Kuwait. Why did they blow up a civilian port in Kuwait? That's civilian infrastructure. Well, it turns out there was a command center in the fucking middle of the goddamn civilian port. Like, this is literally what Israel projects all the time. Whenever they say, oh, Hamas is hiding under hospitals. Hamas is hiding under, civilian infrastructure. We have to blow up the civilian infrastructure. Well, in this case, like, they literally were there. They died in a container that was in the middle of a fucking civilian port. Yeah, probably my initial statement was just saying Khamenei wasn't totally accurate when he said they were only hitting bases. That's not accurate. Nobody compared actions of Iran or Israel. Iran was violating. Yeah, of course. Of course, they're not 100% accurate, and they're not just hitting the bases. They also suggested that they might hit the banks, right? Because when the enemy is going up the escalation ladder and hitting oil refineries like Israel did, then Iran retaliates by striking oil refineries, right? If Israel and America starts hitting banks like they did, then Iran says, we might actually hit banks. We might hit banks in the GCC. Okay? Americans are bazookaing apartments near my parents, bro. Yeah. So hitting banks in the GCC, they have not done so, if I'm not mistaken, so far. Like, the reality is if America was a regional actor, if the United States of America was where Turkey is, for example, I'm sure that they would be targeting American installations in wherever Turkey is. If America was where Turkey is right now, they'd be hitting fucking banks in America. But the reason why they can't do that and they're hitting the GCC is because that's within reach. That's it.
drone attack. And remember, Oman was the mediator in the negotiations that were taking place earlier this year indirectly between the Americans and the Iranians. And so the current relationships are not good between Gulf countries and the Iranian regime. And despite the fact that some communication has taken place with Iran's foreign minister reaching out to his Gulf counterparts, these attacks against Gulf countries do continue.
Trey, yesterday, even on the 5, we were saying, is there proof of life that we could get that this guy is still alive? There are reports also that he was injured. Do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, I spoke with an Israeli intelligence official in recent days who indicated Mojtaba Khamenei is injured. They downplayed the reports, though, that he was critically injured, saying that he was injured in one of the strikes, the opening.
No evidence that Iran attacked Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Oman oil yet. Okay, the other side of the story is that you cannot take everything that the Iranian government is saying at face value either. Iran and Russia has done this at times too. They have accidentally blown up shit that they didn't intend to blow up. Okay? This is not like just because they're saying that they didn't do this and just because they're denying it doesn't mean that that's actually accurate. Okay? There could have been a rogue element within the IRGC. This is a likelihood, especially with the current limitations that they have in terms of centralized command in the Mosaic defense structure. You can have a rogue IRGC striker decide to fucking blow up the Omani refineries. Okay, that can happen. A misinput. Okay, a misclick. You know, so we don't know. We don't know yet. There will be more investigations that will be conducted in the upcoming days, and we'll have more information. Having said that, as far as like the weight of those statements from the Iranian side, the only one that I definitely don't think was like a misinput and actually was most likely a psyop would be the Omani one, because as far as all of the regional actors goes, like Azerbaijan, there's some evidence that the Azeri airspace is being utilized by Israeli fighter jets, right? And they're entering the Iranian airfields by way of Azerbaijan. There's also American bases in Turkey. So like that one does make sense as far as like whether it's a rogue actor or whether it's like Iran deliberately doing it just to like create chaos or whatever. But the Omani one is the one that makes the least sense. That's why when as far as the strikes that have taken place that like don't make a lot of sense, or expanding the theater of war for Iran, the Oman one is the one that I consider to be the strangest one, especially because out of all the GCC states, like Oman is the one that is the closest to Iran, even closer than Qatar is, and Qatar has a fucking gas field that they share with Iran. Okay, that's the reason why people say like Qatar is the number one op of Israel in the region, that kind of thing, right?
Strikes of Operation Epic Fury, again, that killed his wife, his father, of course, and one son. As we look forward,
also the Omani people are the chillest.
And to that, Jane, I will say he mentioned
it would not be very chill. It would not be very cash money of Iran to strike Oman like that, especially considering how fucking chill they are. Like how unimaginably chill they. I mean, dude, look at this guy. Like even from the fucking photo. Cool as a goddamn cucumber. The Oman oil fields are weird to hit, but they also have U.S. military bases, which strikes me as weirder as Turkey, which almost has definitely not been used to attack Iran. Also, Omanis are chillers through and through. Yes, they're vibe maxing unks. E-rub phase? Okay. Oman says war on Iran is meant to block a Palestinian state and reshape the Middle East. Foreign Minister Saeed Badr al-Busaidi said the real objective of the war is to weaken Iran, reshape the region, and push the normalization agenda, including efforts to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. True. He said Oman will not join the Board of Peace and will not normalize relations with Israel. True. Al-Busaidi warned the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran are a part of a dangerous chain of violations that could undermine the legal framework that has provided regional stability for decades. True. He said Iran is not the only target, adding, there is a broader plan targeting the region, and Iran is not the only target. Many regional actors are aware of this, but they are betting that aligning with the United States may push it to revise its decisions and policies. Oman is seeking to stop the war and return to diplomacy, warning the conflict could drive higher oil prices and major supply chain disruptions globally. Al-Busaidi said the war may end soon, but called for reconsidering Gulf security strategies and preparing for the worst-case scenarios. Remarks were made to editors of several Omani newspapers and highlighted by analyst Rami Khouri. This also is uncharacteristic of the Omanis to say, okay? They are not known for making statements that either step out of line within the GCC or even statements that objectively side with Iran. Like, they are the mediators. They are literally the I'm apolitical group in the GCC. Oman is the apolitical Andes of the Gulf. So for them to come out and not hit a like straight middle of the road approach after they've been fucking struck by what the Western media is calling Iranian strikes is a pretty solid indication of where the Gulf states might actually lean once this bout of conflict ends. Do you understand? Does Oman have a U.S. base? I didn't realize that Oman had a base that has some U.S. troops in it, but it's like mostly a Royal Air Force base, from what I understand. Like, Oman is the Gulf critical, okay, the moist critical of the Gulf. This is Oman putting on a black T-shirt and saying the Gulf situation is crazy, okay. Oman is not neutral. I recognize what they're doing. Yeah, this is them kind of dropping neutrality a little bit. The Gulf situation is crazy. Anyway. Oman decided that they didn't have to be Sunni or Shia, but a secret third thing. Omanis are predominantly Ibadi Muslims. They know what it's like to be a minority in the region as well. Yeah. They're chillers. Anyway. Qatar is Asman? Fuck no. That's not true. No, I would say Dubai is Asman Gold. Except Dubai showers more and has like a more has a more appealing shine to all the cryptocurrency perverts and pedophiles alike. Just like worm-like individuals that fucking behave like Littlefinger, where they're just like, oh yeah, well, we're a Muslim country, but also Islamophobia. The real enemy is Muslims. The real enemy is Muslims. Let's go and purchase every fucking right-wing, white supremacist, anti-Islam actor in Europe and in America. Anyway, you don't have to worry about that any longer anyway. It seems to me like, yeah, Qatar is Dr. Jihad. No, Qatar is more like Ludwig. Spiritually, they're on the right side, but they can hit a coworker take every now and then where you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. Anyway, he not going to the funeral. Yeah, unlike a coworker wig or Chudwig, I think Qatar would go to the funeral, but that's a different point. Visit us in Oman. I'll show you Omani hospitality. Brother, there's not a very high likelihood that I do that anytime soon, okay? Maybe once the region cools down. Yeah, we don't have to worry about Dubai any longer, though, because it kind of feels like the idea of Dubai has been successfully killed. Dubai is finished. Expats say they will leave and never come back as tax-free dream is shattered by war and officials begin prosecuting people for posting videos of missiles. So a lot of people don't realize that, like, there is this shine. There is this patina in the Gulf that these are like, prosperous nations that have, like unlimited freedoms. They're very Western aligned, all this stuff. And they don't realize that, like, in Dubai, for example, in the UAE, you literally cannot criticize the state of fucking Israel. And they're shocked when they find out. You can't criticize Dubai, you can't criticize the UAE, and you cannot criticize the state of Israel in fucking the UAE. Okay? A lot of people might not have known that until recently. And they are finding out in perhaps the worst ways possible, where Dubai is quite literally prosecuting people who have filmed the strikes. So all these expats that are massively consequential for the Gulf states, because not only for like tax evasion purposes, not even for, foreign capital flowing into the country, but these are the guys that also operate like the oil rigs, the refineries, the ones that control like, the IT and shit. Because let's be real, okay? For many of these people, for many of the people that live there, okay, the nationals are, they don't do a lot of this work, okay? The nationals don't do a lot of this work, and the immigrant workers don't do this work either. It's the expats that do this work. Like the people that work in these companies in the oil refineries that know how this shit know how this shit ticks. If they leave, all these countries are fucked. And for the record, it's been that way for years, right? Like both in Saudi Arabia, both in Dubai, even in places like Qatar. Like there are the expats that live there, the immigrants that live there that also need, English speaking Westerners to educate their children.